one of our coaches got distracted, lost track of time. My apologies.
Nice t-shirt.
Thank you very much. This is a TheraBand t-shirt. You'll see more and more of their toys here. We got a fun relationship starting with them. We love all their gear. In the meantime, we're going to go through a couple of things we saw throughout the gaming industry this week, and a couple exercises that are great exercises but done poorly and just really irritate your nervous system, let alone lead to injury. But done well, they're great exercises. So the first of those is a deadlift. And to demonstrate a deadlift, we got a few options. I'm going to get Ben to grab us a kettlebell and a bar. The kettlebell's here, so we'll start with the kettlebell. So as a warm-up and as an exercise, the hinge, or a straight leg deadlift you'll see, or a bent leg deadlift are excellent exercises. I'm tossing the stick, and there's differences between using a barbell or a bar versus a kettlebell. Now for gamers, we know we sit for prolonged periods of time, so we end up in this posture. To go right to an exercise that fixes you, like a kettlebell, in this tight position is not the ideal exercise for you to open up. You can't physically open up when you're stuck in this position with a kettlebell. So as much as kettlebell deadlifts and kettlebell swings are great exercises, they're not a great place for most gamers to start. And this is a big issue we're seeing creeping up increasingly. So as far as kind of kinesiologists and movement specialists here at Game Without Pain, we want to make sure we're picking the right exercises for you and understanding as a gamer, you can't just dive in and do most exercise, let alone a programmer or like our fantastic CEO, Ben. We're on the computer a ton. We're just not in the best place to go attack certain exercises. So what we're going to work on today is building up and figuring out some key exercises to get ready for exercises like a deadlift. And then picking the right tool, a kettlebell versus a barbell versus dumbbells, to go through that motion. So what you'll see in our exercise selection on YouTube and increasing our articles is what's called the hinge. This is a key exercise for anyone doing any strength training. If you can't do this movement well, you shouldn't be squatting or deadlifting, period. To do a hinge well, we need a few things. So the first thing we're going to work on is that anti-sitting posture. So if you have questions as we follow along, please toss them in on Twitch. But to start with, here's how we get into the right upper body position for a hinge. So most of us are internally rotated through our shoulders. So we want to open up. And what we can do that is by screwing our hands out so our palms are facing forward, and this should lift our chest and externally rotate that shoulder and scapula. So we have gaming, computer work, cell phones takes this internal. We want to open up and be externally rotated. So looking forward, here's where we start with gaming. We want to spin up and open. You'll see my chest also lifts and I get a little taller. We want to be tall and long. So there's external rotation. And this is a big term. This is called axial or spinal extension. So here's the typical slouch posture. Our spine is compressed. And as I rotate, this natural bit of lift, I'll have to lift my chest even more. Sorry about the train to get here. If you can't get here, there's no reason you should ever hold a kettlebell or a barbell. Until you can get here and hold yourself here, dumbbells are the best, maybe bands and tubing, maybe even cables, but we're going to stay away from things like bars and kettlebells. So that's a big thing to keep in mind if you think about going to the gym. You need to make sure you can get to these places before you even bother with the gym membership or get holding a barbell. So there's A. So now I've got this shoulder position and I got this nice long spine. B is getting this head to slide in on top. If your chin is not tucked in, you're going to irritate all the muscles in your back and neck. For our gamers, number 1, wrist injuries. Number 2, neck and shoulder injuries. If your neck and shoulder is irritated, the rest of your arm is going to be irritated as well. So there's a tight relationship between the neck and shoulder and the wrist and forearm injuries we see. So that's key to keep in mind. So we got our screwing ourselves in, so we got our shoulders in a better spot. Now we're driving our chin up and in, so our head's in a better spot. So this is useless if we're here. You need to be up nice and tall. So getting here is A. If you can't get here, again, don't bother with kettlebells or barbells. Get this position first. If we're here, we're going to screw in and pull down a little bit to get our lats, these big core muscles turned on. So bang, here's this motion. And now we're going to work on hinging, which is just pushing your butt back, keeping everything else in a nice straight line. So you notice the only joint that's moving is my hips. This ball and socket joint, forward and backward. I should find a stretch, and I should feel some of the muscles in my back working as well. These are these anti-sitting muscles. They get lazy, get more tall, screwed in, push it back for a hinge. I'm gonna hold for 2-3 seconds, and come on back up. Now, why the deadlift and why kettlebells and kettlebell swings are recommended for gamers is the right idea, but not the right execution. So we sit on our hips, we sit on our asses all day long, or for hours on end, whether we're gaming or screaming or watching TV or gaming or programming, whatever we're up to, we end up sitting a ton. So if our hips aren't strong enough and aren't mobile enough, it's gonna affect our whole body and our whole nervous system. So we need strong hips, absolutely. But if the process of you doing your hip-driven exercises means you losing your spine every time you do a deadlift, every time you do a swing, you can get as strong as you want there, you're just gonna piss off your lower back. And the third most commonly injured area we hear from gamers, 1 wrist, 2 neck and shoulder, 3 lower back. So if you're getting into something like a kettlebell for a kettlebell swing and your form isn't perfect, you're just gonna piss all that stuff off. So we'll get to kettlebell swings and we'll get to these things. But today I really want to focus on this education piece because it's kind of concerning me, not kind of, it is concerning me for our gamers, for our athletes, and for the industry at large. So, back to the next exercise. We're working on this hinge. Shoulders are screwed in, we're nice tall spine, pushing our hips back to find a nice hamstring stretch. And we should get some tension on these muscles, the glutes. From here you're going to squeeze together like you're trying to crack a walnut between those cheeks and drive forward. So we're pushing back to find a stretch, and then squeezing our glutes to push forward. And that squeeze should also have a bit of push apart. So what you can think of, screwing forward, palms up, push back, find a stretch, and you're going to try and push the floor out sideways as you push yourself back up. And that'll really engage all the muscles in your hip. So we're tall, push your hips back like you're trying to hip check someone, push the floor out sideways, and push yourself back up. So that's all our spinal muscles working, our hip muscles working, and we're getting a stretch in those hamstrings. So if you got 30 seconds before gaming, hit this movement, please. Key is going to build you up and get ready for squats and deadlifts. Any questions coming in? Are we good?
Well, Spencer he's actually competing in about 45 minutes.
Nice.
So this could be his warm-up, right?
Perfect, great warm-up, Spencer. So we're rolling in, we're getting all your spinal, your postural muscles turned on in this position, and we're gonna get you fired up a little bit more by doing an overhead raise. So in this position, we're working on our shoulder mobility, and we're gonna really light up the muscles in our upper back. So we're gonna get them turned on so that when we're gaming, we don't end up all the way down here. Maybe we just end up in this position. So ideal, better, not where we want to be. So getting that arm raise really lights up the rest of those spinal muscles and your upper shoulder muscles. So again, we're rotating, pushing hips back, find that stretch, and then raise the hands up. And we're going to hold here for 5 seconds. Inhaling, exhaling, lifting with each exhale. Well, if you can hang out here, you can take a break by sliding your hands down and lifting again. If you feel like you've lost the hip stuff, push out into the floor, pushing sideways, kind of like this. And lift again. We're going to hold for 10 seconds if you can. Thumbs out, chin in. Making sure we're not looking up, we're looking down. Hands back to your sides. Oh. And that should light up all the muscles along your spine. You get all those muscles prepped for whatever we're going to do next. So that's a good activation exercise. And this again is key if we're going to work on deadlifting. And we have to be able to get back there without losing our spine. Now, we come to equipment. This is the key step before using a barbell. Just gonna stretch out a little bit. you haven't done your circles yet already, while you're waiting for me to get here late, you can start doing your circles. Using your breath to get that going. You can use your shoulder blades here. Next, 2 or 3. This would be an active rest between bigger exercises. So your head and neck. I slept funny, so I'm a little tight in here today. That feels good. I got my arms moving. Using my breath to drive this. I'm doing a nice big backstroke. What's Spencer competing, or where's Spencer competing today?
Well, from home. It's like a Major League Gaming online tournament.
Oh, nice. It's on land. Nice. So Spencer, if you're getting ready for a game and it's that close to it, I wouldn't do too many high intensity exercises. Go back to the pregame, those circles. That circle routine is critical, what we're playing with now. Arms and shoulders, chest and back, getting those hips turned on. I was worried about to go through some bigger deadlifting learning exercises, so we want to make sure all the major joints are warmed up. And as far as some movement minimums, things you should be able to do before you worry about getting a kettlebell or getting a barbell. We've looked at the hinge, we've looked at that upper body flexibility. It's another test of your core strength. The next thing we need is hip mobility. So we make sure we have loose enough hips and enough motor control so our brain can talk to these muscles before we try really loading them up. So if you can't stand on one leg and pull this kind of stuff off, you shouldn't really have a barbell or a dumbbell in your hand because you're just going to compensate. So having a good build up to a strength program is key. Just strapping things on because they're sexy is a serious problem, particularly if you're an athlete. You can't be bagging or exhausting your nervous system when you're training. You've got to have your training match your abilities, ramp you up and leave you excited and prepared and able to deal with the stress of competition, not pre-fatigued from overexertion. And that doesn't even mean being exhausted doing exercise. Your brain can't perform a movement well, it knows and it freaks out a little bit. So you want to pick things that you can do well, that you can get strong at for your training. Not just big stuff to get fitter. You need to be solid and good first before you worry about getting crazy fit. That's what performance training is for. And that's why we're gamer performance trainers, because there's problems in the industry. So with that being said, we're back to our next bigger exercise. So we're going to take that deadlift motion we were looking at, the hinge, and we're getting out a bar. And the reason we're using a dowel or a stick is to help get into this nice open position. So again, if we're internally rotated, we want to be able to open up. Hard to do that if something's really small, like a kettlebell handle. So with the barbell, we can open wider, so just past shoulder width apart, and we can work on opening up, almost like you're trying to bend the bar. And that's a cue you hear is bend the bar, break the bar, as you want to get as much opening as possible, activation of your back as possible. So you're really trying to almost bend the bar. You should see it flex a little bit if it's a good or soft enough bar. So we're doing that extra rotation. Now our palms aren't opening because we're squeezing the bar, but we're getting that same intention. Exercise is all about intention. So we're getting that intention on the bar, trying to open it up, and then we're going to do the same hinge we were doing and make sure we don't lose anything for having this. So I'm pushing back, find my stretch. So this could be a broomstick, Spencer, if you got one kicking around. Pushing back into that stretch and squeeze it back up. So now we're going to start to let the knees bend a bit more and go through a full deadlift motion. So once the bar hits about mid-thigh, you can start bending those knees. You're going to end up sitting pretty tall in here. We're going to make sure that we're not going and losing that bar. So we're still staying dialed in. And this is key for a deadlift, is you keep that sensation. At the bottom of the deadlift, if you're here, you're going to have problems. We need you to be able to stay tall and work through that motion. So you don't need anything really heavy in your hands here. It's just work on getting low and pushing into the floor. So again, we've got open, we've externally rotated, we're creating this bend the bar, break the bar in half feeling. Pushing back to get that stretch, the knees start to bend, so we get low. the bar basically stays right on those shins. You're pushing out into the floor and coming up nice and tall. I'm getting a good isometric squeeze in my glutes here, and I'm still working that big, important upper back. If you want to add another layer to this, again, this is pre-workout, pre-getting the heavy stuff going, or making sure that you can pop in for that same movement, get down here, and because this is a light bar, see if you can get this bar in line with your upper body, and then maybe even behind it slightly, and come on up. So if you can't get in that position, you definitely shouldn't be thinking about doing kettlebell swings. So these are all great exercises in and of themselves, and great tests before you decide to start doing other exercises, like CrossFit or Olympic lifting. If you can't get through that movement without breaking form, no reason you should be taking a CrossFit or trying to swing a kettlebell up overhead. Just unnecessary and potentially dangerous for you as an athlete. The hard thing to remember here is keeping pressure out into the floor. Knees are really commonly injured when we exercise, so we need to make sure that our hips are nice and strong. So during these motions, I've got my open position, I'm pushing back, I'm coming down, and I'm thinking about actively pushing my feet apart. That engages my hips, so as I come up, I'm pushing into the floor. So coming out and down, get my back fired up. And if you really feel awesome, we can go from here into an overhead squat. And this is a pretty narrow stick for me, so I need a little longer stick, technically, but I'm going to sit back and down, and this is an overhead squat. Great upper back exercise. My whole back and core have to light up here. The stick, if you notice, is pretty much staying right in the middle of my feet. And we need this type of mobility as gamers to stay ahead of the postural problems that happen. We need this type of shoulder strength as gamers to stay ahead of the repetitive positions we stay in. And we need this type of full body strength and ability as gamers to stay competitive. This is your full body nervous system working for you. If you can't get into these positions with something as little as a stick, don't bother throwing a barbell or a kettlebell on your body. It's too much load on top of some dysfunctional movement. You're just waiting for an injury, or at the very least, tiring your nervous system out. And we know gaming is a cognitively demanding sport. It's a nervous system sport, like any other, that really requires a good full function. So if you're getting yourself tired or fatigued or loading up movements that you can't do well in the first place, you're just going to piss your body off. Which brings us to the kettlebell. One of my favorite exercise tools for sure. I love it. I use them almost every day, but I don't use them sometimes for years for clients because it's really easy to get into bad habits. So if we looked at the stick earlier, you notice with the stick we could twist that stick a little bit and get this opening sensation. Because of the grip on the kettlebell, you can't really get the same squeeze. It doesn't work the same way. But you need to have good control of that. It's harder to get that feel. You can do it, but it's not quite as easy or logical as when the thing you're holding onto is bigger. So what you're holding onto makes a huge difference. Just like the type of ergonomic setup you use, the type of chair setup, the setup is critical. If the setup isn't good, the results aren't going to be good. It's the same deal with your exercise equipment. If the setup isn't right for you, the results aren't going to be right for you. You might not notice it short term, but long term, you're going to piss your body off. Have some water? Yes, Ben's on it.
No, this is for me.
Oh, shit. Thanks, man. Nectar of the gods. So, back to our kettlebell swing. We're going to think about this opening sensation. So if you're getting into a kettlebell swing or a deadlift and you're internally rotated, no good. So again, here, lazy grab, there, effective grab. Non-athletic, harmful, dialed in, athletic, useful. Okay, A and B. Now we're going to go through a deadlift before we start swinging. What's been said is a really great exercise for gamers. If done well, awesome. If done poorly, great recipe for injury. So we're going to go through the same deadlifting motion. So we'll squat down and come up. So looking at the front, you'll see my knees stay in line with my feet. Right that middle toe exactly. And I can keep this open position all the way through. So I'm down and I'm up. Looking at the side or from the side, I get that axial length, so I'm nice and long and tall. I'm open or actually rotated and kind of that moment of that intention. I'm almost trying to pull the handles apart here, the horn. I sit back and down, and I come on back up. So notice my spine, from my head to my ass, is dialed in. It's one straight line. So good repetition, push into the floor, bad repetition. This is what we've seen in the industry. We've seen roll your shoulders forward, head pointing up. That is not a good kettlebell position. That's going to piss off your neck, piss off your shoulders, probably irritate your lower back, and generally do nothing to help you as a gamer be and feel in a better, strong position. Training is about helping you feel better, be in a better position so that your brain and body say, hey, I'm a fucking strong man, I got this shit on lock. If we don't have that, as a strong woman or man, that feeling and that reminder, you're wasting your time training. So Game Without Pain, we're about quality over quantity. The industry, not so much. We got to set a higher standards. That's why we're looking for awesome ambassadors like Spencer to do it right. So, we're up and open. We're going to sit back and down, and we're going to look at the start of a kettlebell swing. So the kettlebell swing looks like more aggressive movement. So you see how quickly the bell moves, just up to shoulder height. But if I pause, I'd be able to stick that perfect position. If at the bottom, when this thing is pulling me back, I end up here, guaranteed recipe for injury, short or long term. I need to be able to stick each position without losing my back or losing grip on things. So with that quick demonstration, we're talking about speed. Your nervous system, when you're gaming, you need to be able to respond really quickly, for sure. So training your body for speed with things like kettlebells, or Olympic lifting, or power exercises, or martial arts, anything that produces speed, it's great practice for your nervous system to respond quickly. But if the response is poorly timed, no matter how fast you are, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. Training, especially long-term success, which is I'm assuming what you want as a career as a gamer, or an esports athlete, or a professional athlete, is about effective timing, not wasting energy, not wasting your speed and power. So training has to reflect the same thing. We train the way we want to game. Train the way you want to game. You want to game explosively, effectively, not wasting your time and energy. You have limited resources in game, you have limited resources when you train. So use them effectively. So we'll go through 5 good kettlebell swings and 5 sloppy ones and see if you can point the differences. So we're 1 or 2 to get it going. Get your groove. 1, good one. 2, 3, 4, 5, sloppy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm hoping you can see the differences. Spencer, let me know if you can see the difference between a good one and a sloppy one. Ben, you're watching the delayed reaction. Can you see the differences?
I see the differences.
Can you imagine how much force and torque that's putting on my spine and all my core muscles?
I don't have to imagine, I can see it.
Right? It's not hard. You see good movement, hopefully it helps you execute good movement. So we go back to our kettlebell swings, we should think about really doing them well, if you're going to do them. If you feel like you can't even in slow-mo produce that power and keep everything dialed in, don't even bother putting something in your hands. Even without anything in my hands, I can feel my tendency to kind of get sloppy here. You think about staying open and going through that motion. I love slow-mo fight sequences. Training in slow motion, much like Tai Chi, is a great way to train your body. So if you're thinking about doing kettlebell swings or Olympic lifting, I encourage you to start with something really light or even nothing at all in your hands and go through that motion. Imagine there's 1,000 pounds in your hands. I'm waiting for the day that VR comes alive. We can go down to Ubisoft, which is just down the street from us, and say, hey, I want to throw in some biking gear in 3D, in virtual reality, and pretend like I'm hauling a 700-pound axe and just smashing through things. So train as if. So we're going to dial everything in. You're going to grab a 150-pound kettlebell here and really slowly create all the power you need. Get the thing up and be able to catch it and go again. And go again. So I'm getting a good stretch back here in my thighs and good power up. Now some people, when they do kettlebell swings, let the weight come all the way up. You can do that if your shoulder mobility is perfect and the weight's light enough. But for most of us, because everyone that I've seen and trained and work with, including professional athletes, don't have the best shoulder mobility or strength and should pretty much only be swinging that bell up to about shoulder height. And maybe in line with your eyes at the most. So, brings us to the next topic. Weights and loads versus not. We play a lot of game without pain with bodyweight exercises. We start bodyweight first so that you and your body can be on the same page. You can identify weaknesses or asymmetries, left leg versus right leg. So what we're going to do now is look at a single leg deadlift and pretend like we're doing a single leg kettlebell swing and learn about just how effective that exercise is for pretty much everything you're going to do. As a gamer, as an athlete, we need balance. It's all about the ability to see what's going on in multiple areas and respond where you're needed, not just respond in a million places. So if you're up for it, you get up on one leg for me, and we're going to go through that hinge we did earlier with two legs, just on one leg. So this is a great learning opportunity for you to see if you can balance. It's going to load up all the muscles in your one leg, particularly your hamstrings, if you can get yourself pushing back. The muscle that gets chronically short when we sit. So we're pushing back, picking up a stretch. Our core's on. We're rolling this position in, and we're doing our lift. Hands back to your sides, and see if you can do a pretend kettlebell swing. So we're backing down. Creating enough power here so that I can swing a kettlebell if I have it in my hands. Great exercise. We're getting balance, we're getting control, we're getting neutral spine, we're getting everything. Now, a little challenging pre-game, so Spencer, if you're playing with this, maybe just do one or two before you get going. But for the rest of our gamers and esports athletes, don't worry about throwing stuff in your hand. You've got a cognitively demanding sport. You'll see it in our programming. We build custom programs for athletes and teams. You've got to reflect the needs of your game and train your body to perform for you in game, which means perfectly balanced nervous system as best as you can get it. We'll talk a little bit about nutrition and rest and recovery as well today, but start slow, work with the groove. You're talking to your body here. This is your chance for you and your body to be on the same page. Figure out its weaknesses, figure out its strengths. Maybe you're not confident enough to try something, and you're learning a lot, both physically and mentally, about yourself when you train. Sweaty Sundays, as much as we get a little sweaty and we do exercise, every time you're training your body, you're also training your brain. Trying something new, taking risks, attempting things, not for the sake of getting tired or getting exhausted, but for the sake of getting better at things. And that's what differentiates athletes from everyday exercisers. Athletes are trying to get better, whereas most people, unfortunately, when they approach exercise, are just trying to do more stuff. So training for athletics is about developing your mind and body so you can get good at certain skills. And that's what we're talking about. Getting good at skills, training your body and your mind to be able to pick up. So our little kettlebell swing. So let the knee bend a bit more. Almost losing my balance on that one. So now your legs and hips should be pretty tired. Your foot and ankle might be tired as well, so hopefully you're learning about your weak links. That's the other thing that training will give you. It will give you some insight into how your body works, where you're strong, where you're not as strong. So when you structure your training, particularly pre-season and post-season or pre and post-game, you structure your training differently depending on what's going on. So for our athletes that are in games that have particular seasons, post-seasons, in particular is a great time to repair issues or really correct the postural mechanics of gaming. So a good example or analogy is pitchers pretty much always throw with one hand. So they don't do as much opposing work mid-season. I gotta focus on getting that skill down during game. So much like competitive seasons in game, you're down here competing. You've got to be in this position. Shouldn't be pounding and trying to reverse that all season long. You're just gonna fatigue yourself. Postseason is when you can really work on the corrective stuff. So that's when throwing athletes really start to work on the other hand. They'll work on strengthening the other arm. Even though they're not throwers with the opposite arm, they're going to work on all the mechanics on the other side. Because your brain will get stronger when you train either side, and it will reflect on the other one. So by doing single leg exercises like we're talking about, not only will you get stronger on that side, it'll help the other side get wired, and then you'll be more balanced. If your brain can transmit signals through movement faster, you better believe that it transmits every other signal faster. That's why exercise is basically your magic bullet. I know Ben's always looking for some movement cure, and myself too, I love some magic bullet. But basically, your magic bullet is exercise. So whether you're doing two-legged exercises or one-legged exercise, it's a win. But if you notice when you're practicing these movements, so one side's way better than the other side, don't go grabbing a kettlebell, don't go grabbing a barbell and doing Olympic lifts. Work on that one side. Identify your weakness and hammer up that weakness. We've done a lot of posterior chain, which we will focus on a lot in gaming because of the prolonged sitting. But we're also going to work on single leg stuff for your anterior chain, for the front of your body. Now, one of our Coach Jacob's favorite exercises is a split squat. So just to give you the differences between a split squat and a split squat has an escalator type feel to it. So forward and down, versus a lunge has a more vertical elevator feel to it. And it's a very different stretch and strengthening curve that happens here, depending on the direction of movement. So again, exercise is all about intention. So again, switching legs. We're working on a stretch for the front of our hips here, in this escalator type movement. Find a sweet spot here. We have a yoga pad positioned nicely under the carpet here to make things a little more comfortable. So we're getting a stretch in the hip flexor on the way forward and down. Versus a more vertical lunge, that stretch approaches the knee a bit more. And more strain goes through the back knee. So because in training and exercise and sport, the knee is such a commonly injured area, we want to really emphasize getting strong and balanced at the hip, which is why we like the split squat a bit better than the lunge. So back to what we were talking about earlier as far as kind of the neck and shoulder, arm and wrist, and lower back being commonly injured areas. The first thing we have to learn is how to adjust our pelvis. So most people end up with a really big curve in the lower back when they start this. You need to be able to flatten that curve out, which might create a bit of tension in the front of the hip. It should definitely create some tension through your abdominals. As we come forward and down, you'll notice my upper body mirrors that back leg. So this angle matches that angle. My front foot stays flat. I'm pushing my weight into that front leg. Now if I have some weights in my hand, or even without weights, I can work on that same alignment we had earlier. Training my body and my brain to keep this nice and long spine. Rather than grabbing some weights in my hands and losing that position, I can roll back. If I'm really advanced, I can even have a barbell back here, or at least pretend that I have one up there. I'm used to my hands in that position. So this is a great little stretch to do. If you've been sitting around for a while, we just hang out in that stretch position. We can hang out there and just stretch. If we've been sitting for prolonged amounts of time, again, we're set the pelvis and push forward, pick up a stretch through the front of that leg. Realize I'm in the wrong position to show you that. So I'm set, and I push forward to find that stretch. Set my pelvis, push forward, find the stretch. It's one thing to find a stretch. It's another thing entirely to make it an exercise, which means turning on some muscle. So to make this a really effective exercise, you're going to squeeze this glute and push your hip forward with this glute. So it should be a little harder here. Hold for about 6 seconds and relax. So it's an active stretch versus just kind of hanging out. And what I see and what concerns me a lot about some ways people practice yoga and practice other types of movement is they're just hanging out in positions. And if you're not really focused on holding that position well, you could weaken your nervous system, which happens after static stretching versus active stretching. So if you're actively engaged in the movement and you're creating force as you go through, you're creating more stability. Your brain gets some stretch and gets to be at a different place and gets signals for strength and stability. If you're just hanging out in some position, let's call it a downward dog, and you're hanging out there, just hanging out there for minutes on end, you're not getting a lot of use. You're not getting a lot of information. Versus if you're actively pushing into a pose and trying to create tension and length, then your brain gets a stability signal and you get the advantage of a stretch signal, which helps your nervous system release and open up. But hanging out in poses or hanging out in planks for minutes on end is wasted time unless you're really engaged. So if you have a practice that includes yoga, make sure you're actively getting into your yoga positions. So you'll see in the split squat, looks a lot like a warrior pose. It's a little different ankle position, and here's a warrior pose. Very different, setting your pelvis, rotating and pushing into this pose, then just kind of dropping in and hanging out. So if we're getting set for a lunge, we're practicing this, you're getting into some yoga, you're going to set your pelvis, make sure that knee is pointed straight ahead and pushing into it. If your pose looks like this, you're not getting any real strength development, you're probably just irritating your joints, or if you're just kind of hanging out, again, not getting any real benefit out of these movements. So this is a yoga version of what we call a split squat. So we're going to rotate, so create some spin on this hip. So that knee is pointing straight ahead over basically your middle toe. From here, you're going to push in and lengthen the back leg. So I'm pushing the back leg back, and I'm pushing this leg forward. So I should have a bit of a stretch in the inner thigh, and I can even get my hands up here and carve myself a nice straight line. I can then really try and reach forward and reach back, and I can even try and reach forward and further down into that stretch and pose. So you see very much a split squat. This is our split squat done from a different hip position. So yoga is basically movement. Someone else's names, often and unfortunately in fancy Sanskrit, meant to confuse us a little bit. It's like I think when church used to be only in Latin or foreign languages so no one could get it. It's really simple stuff, but you gotta be focused in your body. So again, we're creating some rotation in our hip. So this knee is in line with the middle toe. Making sure my pelvis is set. A little bit of pressure on the back leg, and I'm coming into the stretch. So this is my warrior pose, a great pose, also called a split squat, with just a little different hip angle. So I'm coming into that stretch. I can create some length on here, pull myself nice and tall, that axial length we talked about. It's a great focusing movement. What I like about yoga is the idea you sit in poses and play around in there. See how much you can sit into it and transition out. So I'm very similar to our split squat, traditionally where we're going hips straight ahead, because we're trying to stretch out your hips from being stuck in that seated position, so we're aligning you like you are in a chair. The idea being to stretch out the hips. So we focused on three major things today. One, the difference of implements. Barbells versus kettlebells versus body weight alone. Critical to have the right tools to get the right results. Two, we talked about certain exercises that are being touted as great for gamers. Primary one being kettlebell swings. Kettlebell swings are a great, challenging exercise. Gets your brain and your body thinking fast, but your form has to be spot on to do that well and actually get that signal to move well. Otherwise, the signal's bouncing around between loose parts and weak parts, and you're not getting that good direct nervous system information you think you're training for. And three, we looked at a movement style called yoga and compared it to other movement. Yoga or exercise or Tai Chi, no matter what the name of the movement, it's about intention. If you're intentionally setting your body up a certain way and exploring where you're feeling the stretch and what you're feeling, you're going to get good benefits. If you're just getting into a pose that's supposed to loosen you up or lengthen you, and you're just hanging off the meat, or you don't have the requisite balance or mobility to even come close to doing that pose well, you're just wasting your time. So a prime example is a downward dog. Great stretch for the hips and hamstrings. Needs great mobility in the upper body. So if you're doing yoga for your practice, as part of your relaxation training, as part of your cool down or warm up for gaming or competition, we need to have a few things in mind. One, can you stay nice and tall and get your hands up overhead without losing your lower back, without letting your head shoot forward? If you can't do this standing, you shouldn't be doing a downward dog, at least not the full version of it. And two, if you can't inhale, exhale, and lift your leg up, borrow my shorts, up to about 90 degrees, you're basically wasting your time trying to do a downward dog in the traditional sense. You don't have the right mobility in your hamstring, you're just going to compromise your lower back or your upper back, or worse, your neck and shoulders, let alone your wrists. So understand the prerequisites for certain movements. Find good coaches to help you specifically adapt these great exercises to you, let alone to your teammates. If you're on your team and you're an exercise enthusiast, or you feel great when you do yoga and you're bringing that to your team or your organization, and you're fired up about how good it feels when you exercise, we know it helps your performance, bring that energy to your team and help your team find good coaches. As a coach and a professional for years, I love seeing exercise come into any space in the industry. It will help people feel better, do better, for sure. Even just starting to get active will feel good at this first part, even if you're not doing it well. But if you make exercise and movement a consistent part of your culture and your team's culture, and you're not doing it well, it will not pay dividends in the long run. It might even lead to injury in the short term, or irritation, or just poor performance you wouldn't relate to training. But if trained well and done well, all these exercises and styles will help your nervous system perform better, because you're practicing talking to it and telling it to do what you're asking it to do, specifically, quickly, or with endurance. So train like you game, and game like you train. It's about quality and consistent practice. We're going to go through a couple more of these yoga poses that I quite like, and give you some modifications though. So if you are doing it already with a coach and you're not sure they're giving you the right cues, use these as some tools. So for this downward dog, a good regression is just working on a toe touch. So keeping your knees nice and straight. Work on getting overhead and down to the toes. You can let everything round here and unwind. We need this ability to let your head totally hang. If you find you get to the bottom of a toe touch and you're looking like this, your head is up, it means your nervous system is still freaking out a little bit. So your brain's saying, I don't know, I'm tight here, I don't want to go there, don't make me do it. So you need to work on your ability to just unwind. So a great starting exercise is using your head to drive a toe touch. So inhale, exhale, chin to your chest. Just like we start with our rolls, chin to your chest, and that takes your chest down, and your spine is moving piece by piece by piece. We're coming all the way down, arms are loose, head is tight, push my hips back. Pause where you need to breathe. And then back up the way you came, spine by spine by spine by spine by spine by spine by spine. We're working on your ability to actually let your spine move segment by segment. And if this movement causes any pain or any kind of referral, numbness, or tenderness, it means you've likely got some nervous system impingement. So something is getting really tight on one of your nerves outletting from your spine or through some muscles. So it's a great self-diagnostic, and it's a great precursor to any kind of hamstring flexibility. If we can't get there and do that pretty well, there's a good chance that deadlifts or straight leg deadlifts, any kind of forward bend posture from yoga or Tai Chi styles is going to be poorly done and maybe even irritate your body. So again, sometimes it's called a Jefferson curl, and you'll see some people do it with a kettlebell or with a barbell. But I encourage you to start light and don't rely on the weight to help pull you around until you can talk to your body in that way first. So it's inhale, exhale, I'm nice and open here, chin down, my chin takes my upper back, My upper back starts to roll. My mid back. My hips are pushing back, you see. My legs are staying straight. Maybe you'll notice they want to bend. Go all the way down there. And eventually, you can even do this. From a step, so you can be even higher up and do that movement. So first, work on being able to relax this whole posterior side of your body and let gravity do its thing with it. If that causes you any pain or discomfort coming down or coming up, please give us a buzz, or shoot us a note, say, hey, I tried that Jefferson curl, that exercise is called, or that modified toe touch, and man, I got a little burn here, or it was really tight here. It'll be great and helpful for us to help prescribe the right exercises for you, let alone for you to build on. So the purpose of Sweaty Sundays, like I said, is to get sweaty and try some new moves and try a little something else. But really, it's also to help you understand how exercise relates to gaming performance, and how training improves your gaming, and getting this idea that how you train affects how you game, and game how you train, train how you game, to get the most results out of those things. And I know people and our athletes are really excited about learning the maps well on their games, or getting down the finer points of technique, or understanding their characters really well. And if you understand your body and you talk to your body really well, you will perform better, period. No matter the task, no matter the activity, no matter the sport, the more in tune with your body you are, the better you'll perform. A great example of this is Cirque du Soleil. Recently, they started working with a physical literacy specialist. So literally the goal was just, hey, can you stand on one foot? And can you do these simple tasks? Cirque du Soleil's injuries went down by approximately 20%. This is professional elite athletes, maybe the best movers in the world, reducing their injuries and increasing their performance by working on simple things. Same thing goes with FIFA. We're really excited to see EA Sports in the space. And a few years ago, FIFA designed a set of exercises, which you'll see in our content coming up and around, called the FIFA 11. 10 simple movements that they've since added to, and the one being good sportsmanship. And in this movement package, they designed it specifically to work on balance, quick transitioning, and good core strength. With that, they also reduced their lower body injuries and athlete injuries by approximately 20 to 30% depending on the area of injury. That's just by working on these fundamentals. These are already highly tuned physical athletes, getting more in tune with the little things and seeing their performance drive up immensely. So when you approach your training, or you think about exercising, or you're an excited athlete and want to bring training to your team, think about doing it well and working on the little things first. Don't worry about just getting sexy exercise and make fun videos of. That might just come back to bite you in the ass. So from Scott T to Game Without Pain, I think I've about spent my time with you today. How are we doing, Ben?
Good.
What do we got time-wise?
You're good to go whenever.
Amazing. I'm a sweaty mess. I feel like I got some exciting things out there to you I really wanted to share. You'll see more from us in coming newsletters and videos, and we're really going to help the industry do better. So if you're working with a team, please reach out to us and say, hey, we want to do this better, not just do it. Love a certain clothing brand, but we can do things better. Have a beautiful Sunday, everyone.